Okay, so before I go ahead and get started talking to you guys here about the movie Captain Marvel that is just released yesterday night, I want to go ahead and take the opportunity to go ahead and let you guys know that I know this movie has gotten a lot of heat based off of the several comments that we got from Brie Larson stating on how much she's very feminist and that she's very against white male, so on and so forth. All that I don't care about. It's really none of my concern. I really, the way I look at it is everybody's entitled to their own opinions and everybody is different, and you know, I feel like you are very much respecting yourself by having to talk about how you truly feel about the ways of the many things that you believe in life. So really I'm letting you guys know that I do not take any of those comments into consideration regarded towards this movie, because I am a big fan of the MCU, of course, as the majority of people do when you are a part of an audience going to go and see these great and fantastic superhero flicks. And I was very much looking forward to seeing the movie Captain Marvel, because ever since we got the ending to the end credits scene to Infinity War, getting to see that pager and seeing the Captain Marvel logo on that pager, it brought a lot of people with a lot of huge excitement and having to see what this character, who this character is and what she is capable of. So I am Awesome Joe. Thank you guys so much for taking in the time of your day to having to watch one of my videos. You guys are such a huge inspiration to me for having to do my great and personal hobby, because I love to talk about movies, but more importantly, I love to talk about them with you. So let's go ahead and get it started here, you guys, with Captain Marvel.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ready, set, go.
Right, so there is a lot to talk about here regarding towards this movie, so I'm going to make this very short, quick, and to the point. Brie Larson in this movie, I think that she's a wonderful actress. I recently saw what she is capable of in the movie Room, which was released some time ago. I think it was back in 2015, and she won an Oscar for that. So when I heard that Carol Danvers is going to be played by the actress Brie Larson, I figured I'd go ahead and take a look to see what type of unique capabilities that she has in store in having to portray this certain character, why she was chosen to be a part of this big, humongous cinematic universe. So when I saw Room, I thought, brilliant. She is fantastic, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing her transferring that type of unique set of acting skills onto this character, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel. And I honestly have to say, I expected more. I don't really think that Captain Marvel stood out in this movie. Having it being her movie and being entitled being her movie, I don't feel like she really stood out and having it to making it her own flick. So that was a little bit disappointing for me. There's a lot of disappointments within this movie that I walked out of the theater and saying I just didn't like it. So like I said, I walked into the theater even before and having to want to love this movie, because I am not against female superheroes. I wasn't against the female Ghostbusters. I was very much wanting to look forward to having to love that movie, but instead it became a massive disaster. Along with Wonder Woman, which is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. So, and I happened to leave that movie having to love it very much enough to wanting to see more. But when it comes to Captain Marvel, I really don't feel like Brie Larson really brought it all to the big screen here, and I don't really think that it is her problem. I don't really think it's her issue. I think that she's fully capable of having to develop this character. It really does bring me into remembering like with Doctor Strange with Benedict Cumberbatch. I didn't like Benedict Cumberbatch being Doctor Strange. I really felt like a different actor was fully capable of having to portray this certain type of character. But you know, the movie was, for me, it was god awful. I didn't like the movie. But then when you watch Doctor Strange returning back in Infinity War, he is actually one of my my favorite superheroes within that movie. And I think that it has to do with direction, because this movie is directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, and I think that those two, I'm not aware of their work. I don't really know what they've done before in the past. But based off of this movie alone, I think that it was terribly written. I don't think that the story was fully developed into the full satisfaction that audiences and critics and fans were expecting. So I think that it's not Brie Larson's fault. I feel like when we see Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, again in Avengers Endgame, which is coming up within the following month, I think that she's going to be the most interesting and very unique character within the whole entire film. So I think that that's very fascinating, looking forward to seeing what her character is going to bring to us in future events within the MCU. Now, I'm trying not to spoil this movie for you guys, because this movie was just released, and I don't want to go ahead and ruin this, because the MCU is one of the biggest movie franchises of our time. And I think that a character named Yon-Rogg, played by Jude Law, I was really fascinated in having to see what that character was in this movie. I really wanted to see who Jude Law's character was. I wanted to see where it was going to take us towards, and that was also another complete disappointment for me. I really wasn't okay with how everything was. This whole entire story, it's a little bit of a remembrance to some certain other movies developed into this one. In other words, cases, I've seen this before, and I feel like it's done a lot better within those other films, and this one didn't really quite do it for me. I will give it to Sam Jackson, though, for having to be a part of this movie and being his younger self, because quite normally nowadays, if you were to have a younger version of an actual character, they would actually recast that person with a younger actor. But in which cases, we did get Sam Jackson coming back playing a younger Nick Fury, and he is a completely different character in this. Not the same Nick Fury that we know throughout the whole entire 10 years of the MCU. No, he is a completely different. He's very let loose. He doesn't have his walls up. He does have a lot of trust for people, but throughout the movie, you do get to see and how his character is developed. I will go ahead and give out a disappointment here that everybody knows that he's going to lose his eye in this movie, and I will say he does lose his eye, but I will not say how he loses it. And that happening, oh god, I literally yelled out loud in the theater. Really? That's how it's going to happen? Wow. I mean, I was so excited when the moment in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, when he said, "The last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye." And he has this huge trust for a certain character in the movie, and and somewhere around in the movie, he loses his eye because of that reason. And I'm like, it was just terrible. I didn't like that at all. It was a complete disappointment, and I was really hoping for better. It was more comedic more than it was a more of a serious term. I love Ben Mendelsohn. I really do think that he does a really great job in having to portray a villain. In which cases in this movie, he is pretty much like a villain, but then somewhere around the line, it does take it to a different course. And like I said, I'm not trying to spoil this for you guys. I don't really think me saying those type of comments is going to spoil this for anybody. But I really do feel like Ben Mendelsohn could have done better. I know a lot of people are going to be overly fascinated with his performance in this movie because he does do a brilliant job. Don't get me wrong, he does do a brilliant job. But I really do feel like I said, the whole setup with all these characters was terribly done. I wasn't really overly fascinated with any of these characters. I do enjoy the cast. Every one of these individuals that are casted in this movie are a brilliant choice. I have no problem with that at all whatsoever. But like I said, the direction of where these characters were being put and where they were going forward on was not very satisfying for me. So I really do feel like Ben Mendelsohn, being a terrific actor, did not portray the character that I was really looking forward to watch. The special effects, the makeup, and all that stuff. I wasn't really fond of. I really didn't like it. Usually nowadays those type of characters are CGI'd now, and I'm a big fan of having to use makeup artists and costume developments and so on and so forth, because it really does bring you into the movie more. But I feel like the characters of the Skrulls are very much like Star Trek. I mean, they feel very Star Trek-y. I didn't feel like I was watching a Captain Marvel movie. I didn't feel like I was in the MCU. I felt like I was in a Star Trek movie, and I'm not a big fan of Star Trek. So that's another big minus for me. Annette Bening is in this, and I'm not really too familiar with her work, but I know that she's been on many projects before in the past, and her having to be in this, I was really looking forward to seeing what type of character she was and what she was going to bring to the table. Is she fully capable of having to be a part of this universe? But the way I look at it is, I really do feel like this is, I didn't feel disappointed with this one. I really did not. Only the fact that there was a certain sequence within the movie that was leading you towards something, but is never really revealed. And it really put me into a certain position of not knowing what's going to occur, maybe within future sequels of Captain Marvel, if it's successful to have a sequel. But in other words, I really do think that Annette Bening character is not highly interesting, and I feel like it was overly forced. So that's really much all I can say about that character. Asha Lynch playing Maria Rambeau. I really feel like she's a female version of James Rhodes, the best friend to Tony Stark. So that relationship, that sister friendship between Carol Danvers and Maria Rambeau, it really did feel forced. She doesn't appear within the movie until the middle part of the film and all the way through towards the ending. And I really don't think that the relationship was even there. I didn't really feel a connection. And the way that Brie Larson, she loses her memory and she gains it all back when she takes a visit to Earth, when she lands onto Earth and meets Samuel L. Jackson, which course cases, I really did love the buddy cop type of relationship conversations going on between them throughout the movie. That was really fascinating. I also want to point out as well the 95 nostalgia throughout the movie. I love it. Blockbuster, Game Boy, Radio Shack, so on and so forth. All the music that was playing in it throughout the 90s, fantastic. Waterfalls is my favorite by TLC. I love that. But going back to Maria Rambeau, I really didn't feel like her character was very necessary, other than having to get her to get more of a little bit of a remembrance as to who Carol Danvers is before she became who she is now, or back in 95. And speaking of Rambeau, we got Monica Rambeau, who plays a certain character in the future of the Captain Marvel series. The character Photon. It's like some other character. But I feel like we don't know anything about Captain Marvel. Let's stick to just this Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, and let's worry about future characters, about the future of this character in the storyline within years to come. But in the meantime, let's just focus on Carol Danvers and her development into becoming the Captain Marvel character that we're going to be experiencing in Endgame. So I feel like that was very unnecessary either. Stan Lee cameos. You cannot have an MCU film without a Stan Lee cameo. Now, I know that he recently passed away this past December, but I really do admire the type of cameo that he has, and that the tribute that is given to him for this movie, because this is the first MCU movie after his death, and I really do love the fact on how they did put a lot of effort in having to throw a tribute out for him for all of his great successful imaginations that he's given onto us for comic books, television, and movies. So he's a fascinating man. I never did have the privilege in having to meet him personally, but I know that he is a very terrific person in having to bring us this wonderful universe of superheroes. So he will be dearly missed, and I really do love on how you know, he's put into this movie. I don't know if he's CGI'd. He looked a little CGI'd to me when he was in this. But I do think that he did film a scene for Captain Marvel and Spider-Man Far From Home and Avengers Endgame before he passed away. So I think that those are going to be his last cameos before they start CGIing him into future Marvel films, or he's going to be like a picture of him on a poster in the background, like how they did in Deadpool 2. But other than that, I think that Stan Lee and having to have his continuation within these movies is a wonderful tribute to his great success in having to develop this really wonderful world of the MCU. Several other characters are returning within this franchise. We've got Agent Coulson, who is played by Clark Gregg, coming back into this. I think that the CGI for having to have a younger Nick Fury was fantastic. I think it really was outstandingly well done. But for Agent Coulson, I really didn't like it. It felt a little bit too unreal. When you are, you know, solo in the screen, I mean, it's okay. But when you're mixed in with a whole bunch of other people, it really does bring it out there enough to take you out of the film and notice that, yeah, it's fake. And then we also get Ronan, who plays Lee Pace, is returning. I don't really think his character was necessary in this movie. You know, he is a villain from the first Guardians of the Galaxy flick, and having to know that his character is a Kree, and we are involving with the Kree culture, that he should be included into this storyline. But into which cases, I don't really think that he was fully necessary. They did open it up for him to come and return for future Captain Marvel flicks, having to see that maybe there is a possibility of him returning, or having a new type of villain being introduced into a Captain Marvel sequel. But other than that, I feel like he was very unnecessary. Goose the Cat, I heard that he was going to stand out very well in this movie, but I find it to be highly disappointing and very unuseful. It was supposed to bring a lot of comedic performances throughout the movie to bring a lot of laughs, but instead for me, I really felt out of it because, like I said, there's a lot of CGI in this. Terrible CGI, and I think that the cat's Goose is quite one of them, and so I really don't feel like that type of character was very satisfying for me. And of course, if you're going to go to the theaters to watch an MCU film, you always have to stay after the credits, the mid-credit scene and the end credit scene. I mean, the end credit scene is not highly that interesting. I don't really think that it's an ending to say that, oh, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens next. It's the mid-credit scene. I'm not going to give out what's going to happen, but I really was excited to see what this one was going to have in store for us. And it does, I will admit, it does give you a little bit more of a glimpse as to what we're going to be looking forward to in Avengers Endgame. So I'm more excited for Endgame than I was with having to watch this Captain Marvel movie, in which cases I don't think that I'm going to be having to watch this movie again anytime soon. In which case, if I want to like it, then I'll go ahead and watch it several times. But in the meantime, the only great thing about this flick is the mid-credit scene. That's about it. The rest of the film is highly useless to me, other than the fact I know that there are some good potential aspects throughout the film that really gave you that 90s nostalgia and having to love bringing you back into the world of the 90s. So I thought that was really fascinating, really great. But the mid-credit scene is pretty much my favorite part of the whole entire film. And Rotten Tomatoes gave this movie an 82%, and for me, I didn't very much like it enough to give it that much of a high rating, so I gave it a 54%. You know, it's over medium, but it's around in that center there to where it was too bad and too good at the same time. I really do feel like they had more of a high potential in having to make this a really successful development of an MCU film. So I'm Awesome Joe. That's my review for Captain Marvel. What did you guys think? If you happen to have watched Captain Marvel yet, please leave a comment in the section at the bottom. Let's have an awesome conversation regarding towards this movie, because I love to talk about movies, but more importantly, I love to talk about them with you. And thank you guys so much for taking in the time of your day to having to watch one of my videos. You guys are such a huge inspiration for me for having to do my great and personal hobby. And thank you guys so much. Stay awesome, and I will see y'all in the next video.